Welcome to the Children in Scotland podcast. In this episode, we hear from projects funded by the Access to Childcare Fund and learn more about subsidised childcare and family support and how important they are for improving the lives of children and families. First, we hear from Natalie Phillips from Clyde Gateway Supporting Families project.
The family support worker's skill set, knowledge and commitment to the role is a key element to the success of the programme. This is about simplifying the process for parents to access a wide variety of services and resources. Family support has been key to a family-centred model that's both bespoke and holistic. Having embedded family support that's connected to the schools and nurseries has been a successful approach. Families have been able to contact the family support worker directly through text messages and phone calls, which is not something that nursery and school staff can always accommodate. Family support has really enabled our project to invest in taking that time to get to know the family as individuals so that we as partners can ensure that support is led by their interests and needs, which can really vary greatly between families. In our project, the expertise of the family support worker extends beyond education and means that they can signpost, offer advice and respond to the needs relating to housing, childcare, financial, health and well-being and employability issues as well. The access to childcare support has resulted in many positive outcomes for families across a range of areas over and above addressing the childcare barriers, and that covers everything from improving health and well-being, progress towards positive destinations, improved financial situation, greater confidence and better social networks.
My name is Margot Mooney. I'm currently the Family Support and Engagement Officer in the Supporting Families in Rutherglen and Cambuslang Access to Childcare project. Our project has been supported enormously by having the access to childcare element for it. We've been able to provide families with respite for their health and well-being, where individuals needed to be supported through specific areas of their health and well-being. We've been able to access group work supports where individuals would not have been able to do this before they had that extra element of childcare built into it. Families have been able to access parenting support to go to classes. They've been able to attend projects within Routes to Work South, which have supported them to upskill themselves and look at future employment and training opportunities, which is something that they wouldn't have been able to do again without that added extra childcare onto the end of the school day. They've been able to attend cost of living workshops, which has been really beneficial at the moment in terms of the financial well-being and the impact on families that we're seeing currently. We've been able to support families in many different ways with that extra added on access to childcare. We've obviously been able to support families with extra childcare for under fives through our good links with the nurseries that we're working with for short periods of time just for respite or attending groups. The link between the family support worker and good quality childcare is vital. It gives the parents confidence and it builds their self-esteem. It's vital to helping them explore their options and provide fair opportunities for all to access, because some families don't have the opportunity to access if they don't have extended family or supports within their community. Especially what we're finding is within the single parent families that we're working with. We've had quite a few statements from families around the support that they've provided. These included very valuable service. Without it, they wouldn't have been able to go on and do future training with Routes to Work South and develop their skills, allowing them to now access employment, which in turn is enabling families to do what we're aiming for, is to raise their family income so that they have more funds to support themselves and have access to opportunities. Some families have said that without the support of a family support worker, they could not have made these changes. They needed that person. They needed that bit of hand holding at that point in time where they were at their lowest. So that enabled them to move forward, to have someone there to advocate for them in the first instance until they were able to do this on their own. They would have been lost in the system without this support. So it's really the family support worker is vital, a vital element to the project. They couldn't have embarked on future training without the family support worker and the after school care, as they had longer hours at colleges or courses that they had to attend. It also allowed families to study. They felt that they had a port of contact, that there was someone that they could always call if they needed to find out a piece of information or they were struggling with something financially, or where did they go to find out something. So they had that port of contact, which again they felt was a vital element. The support has helped them through challenging times. That's what has come back to us as well, and that most of the families are grateful for the support they have received through the project, and have gone on from strength to strength, and they've been empowered and moved on to employment or to college or just to a better place in their own health and well-being.
I'm here today with Roisin DeVille from Indigo Childcare. Roisin, would you be able to tell us a little bit about your project?
Hello, we are a social enterprise. We're a childcare organisation that we've got some bases in Castlemilk and Garrahill at the moment. So we have services for children aged 0 to 16. Our school-age childcare services are based up in Castlemilk, so we've got two main bases, but we collect from primary schools across the community, and we have a youth-based service into youth, which is based in the Castlemilk Youth Complex as well, and that goes up to the age of 16.
Can you tell me how important the family support element has been to your project?
Yes, so family support has been integral to it really, because the vast majority of families who are accessing our services through the Family Matters project have not only accessed subsidised childcare places, but also family support. So when I was having a little look through the numbers, what we offer as a kind of standard to any family that becomes engaged with us is signposting and referrals to money advice. Because if they're being referred for subsidised childcare, that's something that they might need to access. But 70% of families on top of that received at least one other form of family support, whether that was additional information or more intensive support. And we have also extended family support to our early years families as well. And we've also included our services, family support services, to families that live within the Castlemilk area. So not everyone who's registered with our service actually has a child that attends Indigo, but they might have a child that they would like to wish to register, but there's a wee bit of support that they need in place before then. So I think kind of why it's so important that we have it as a kind of central part of our subsidised childcare and our Family Matters programme is that families that have quite complex, can have quite complex circumstances that they're facing. We've been kind of tracking what families are telling us that they're experiencing, any barriers or issues that they might be facing. And the average barriers that families are facing is 7. And over 66% of our families are facing 5 or more barriers. So we kind of know that it's not just a short-term one-off financial intervention that will get the family to where they want to be. There might be several other steps, and that includes a bit of support and time for them to get there.
What have families told you about your project?
I think one of the most common things that I hear after having that initial conversation with a family about having a chat of where they're at and where would they want to be, and some of the kind of first steps that we can take is just it's a weight off their shoulders. That's the first thing that people say, or just I feel like I can breathe again. And I think that is the power that subsidised childcare has for families is a breathing space. It's giving them an opportunity to actually step back and think about what's next and start to move forward, which is something maybe they've been struggling to do because they have so many things to juggle. And I think as well, just one of the things that we hear, which is really important for us to hear, and I'm glad that we hear it from families, is that they feel listened to. We do take a family-centred approach, and I think so. That for us that means that we are meeting each family and thinking, like, just hearing where they're at and actually what's important for them, and working at their pace and understanding what their priorities are, what's important to them. And I think that's been really central to building up that positive relationship, and helping them to kind of progress forward as well.
So you've one of the projects that's accessed the Access to Childcare Fund. How has that enabled you to develop your project further, accessing that funding?
It's allowed us to embed family support across the service. So it's not just about myself as a family support coordinator working in a silo as the only person that delivers family support. It's about it being across the organisation as a way of working, and how all members of the team see their role within family support, whether that is just how they have conversations with family, passing on information and picking up signs that maybe they would potentially like to have a little bit of extra support, or where they might need some. But it's also allowed us to have a bit of time and space to really understand what families are experiencing, what's important to them, what are they find challenging. And that's meant that we can develop in a service in a way that is responding to that. And it's kind of developed alongside what we learn from our families, which is really important. But also because of that, it's meant that we have been able to apply for different funding opportunities and expand the different types of support that we can offer through that as well.
You've kind of touched on it already, but I just wondered what you think the links between family support and good affordable childcare are.
I think the key link is in accessibility. So it's open up services and opportunities to families that might have not had them before. And that can be both that it's opening up childcare to families that maybe haven't had the opportunity to access that, or would like to get back into employment or training and education. And actually the thought of trying to get into childcare, the cost is too much of a barrier. So it's enabled us to kind of open up those doors. And I think that's a really important link. It's opened up childcare for people that maybe wouldn't have accessed it before, but also I think for families that have been internally referred, it's maybe there are people that are accessing family support that maybe we wouldn't have reached before. Traditionally, I guess, have been kind of coping and thought, I don't need to have interventions, but actually a little bit of support has been helpful for them to bounce back a bit quicker, or just have the right information to kind of get on their way. So it's maybe opened up doors in different ways, if that makes sense.
I think that's an important point, because, we've seen families who were coping quite well, but now with this cost of living crisis, I think it's quite difficult for them sometimes, and they don't always know who to go to. So if they've got somebody that can signpost them in the right direction, it can alleviate some of that stress a bit for them as well.
Yeah.
Just because it's the
Definitely.
first time someone have experienced these sorts of situations that can be, as you said at the beginning, quite complex.
Yeah, and one of the things that people, families do tell us is that I just don't know where to start. Like I go into Google and I try to find something that will help me, or where can I find support? But finding that can sometimes be quite difficult, knowing if you fit criteria, or is that service open to you, is it local to you, can not always that easy for people to tell when it's their first time looking for something. So having someone that is easily accessible to all families is really important.
So we can see that the wonderful work that's been done across all of the projects that have been involved in developing family support within the projects. I just wondered if you could tell me a wee bit more about what your hope is for the future of family support.
I hope it just becomes more normalised, I think, and by that it's normal to find some kind of family support within any service that families might access. So childcare, schools, education, organisations that focus on youth-based services. I think if we have a family support strand through all of those things, that means it's really easily accessible, and more families will know where they can go for help, and also that it's normalised for families to access it. So as I was saying before, I think, there are so many people that most of us will come up and against some kind of bump, some kind of challenge at some point in our lives, no matter where we are or who we are. And it would be really great if people felt like that's okay, I can ask someone where to get a bit of help and that will help me move forward, or and that might just be a little bit of information for some people, and someone else might need a little bit more intensive support, and that's where that person-centred approach comes in again. But it would just, my kind of hope would be that family support is there for anyone who needs to access it whenever they need to.
Yeah, I think that's been the good thing about the Access to Childcare Fund, is actually being able to test family support within school-age childcare.
Yeah,
because we have seen family support in early years, but also, to kind of be able to test different models of family support within school-age childcare with the fund, I think has been really good to compare and contrast as well what everybody's been doing, and to be able to have that fund to enable them to do that. So I was just thinking, though, we spoke about earlier on about, maybe helping to empower families through signposting. And I know across the projects we've seen that accessing some of the kind of free and subsidised places have helped some of the families to get maybe back some of their confidence, and also again to access maybe employment and training, or it could just be sometimes respite. But I just wondered, in relation to that, how do we sustain that opportunity to access these free and subsidised places? Is the only way that we can do that through having some type of funding available?
I think there'll probably always be families who will massively benefit from accessing childcare who won't have the means to pay for it. And subsidised or fully funded childcare would always be a great option for those families. So in that case, I guess funding should always be there. And I know that there is always a difficulty in balancing the demand for services versus capacity and funding. And I think, in that respect, that's where it's so important to take that person-centred or family-centred approach, because you're with that family each step of the way, and you're able to see where they are, where their circumstances are, because we might see that someone, one of the parents or carers, gets a new job role, and that's fantastic. They've achieved one of their goals and they've achieved an outcome, but that doesn't always mean that they have got to this kind of place of stability that they're looking for. What does that actually mean for them? So for someone, they might be waiting for other benefits to come into play. If they have a child with a disability, do they need to wait for the child disability payment to be approved? Would that help them be more stable on top of their employment? Is it that they actually need to build their credit? Things like that, things that they maybe haven't had an opportunity to do because they have so many outgoings, and versus what they've got coming in, it's really difficult to manage that. Whereas a bit of financial breathing space that subsidised childcare can provide a family will allow them to gain a new sense of stability that might not have felt as achievable as it did now, with the subsidised childcare. So I think it's balancing giving families enough time, support and information to get where they need to be, while making sure that you reach enough families as well. And I know that can always be a difficult one, but I do think there will always be families that will really benefit from childcare who aren't in the position to pay straight away, and there should be that option for them.
Well, you've been involved in a family support element right from the beginning of your Access to Childcare Funded project, and I just wondered what it's been like for you personally to be on that journey with the families. How have you felt it?
It's been really positive, to see families be able to access something for the first time a lot of the time. The relief that sometimes you hear from people having that, even when it's a bit of short-term funding, just to get over a bit of a hurdle that they've had. It's, to be able to support people in that process is a privilege, and it's really great to see the progress that families have been able to make with that support. And I think, like anything, it's knowing the kind of the part that you're always thinking about when you're the person providing support or the organisation providing support is what's next. How do we make things sustainable? Because we know when things are pulled too quickly for people that there is a possibility that they can move backwards, and we really don't want that for our families. So there is always that thinking about what's next and what can we do to provide as much stability and consistency for our families as possible as well.
I think that's something that we've all spoken about before, really, isn't it? That there's just that worry sometimes that quite often families will tell their story, and then, you know, if that organisation or that project goes, it's having to tell your story again. And as you mentioned right at the beginning, a lot of the families do have very complex situations.
Yes.
And so, you know, how many times can you tell that story? So I think you're right. If it's sustainable and it's something that they know is there, and it just lets them kind of explore options for themselves, you know, having that support behind them, and it can be quite empowering for that family. And you know, and they, as you said before, they can take it in all different directions, whether that be employment or training or smaller steps than that, but building up their confidence. You know, just to create better outcomes for themselves and for their children as well. So it's so important. I just kind of wanted to say thanks very much, Roisin, for your time today. I've really appreciated it. It's been really good to get an insight into Indigo's project as well. I'm with Samantha Graham, who's one of the projects from the Access to Childcare Fund. We're going to be talking about increased access to family support and the impact that it's had on the access to childcare families.
I'm Samantha Graham. I am the Postle Park Flexible Childcare Manager with Stepping Stones for Families. We provide families in the Postle Park area with quality, flexible early learning and childcare solutions, with a main aim of sustaining positive changes for children, young people and their families.
It's really great to have a chat to you today about all your experiences. So I was just wondering, just to start off with, how integral has family support been to your project?
I think the family support aspect for Stepping Stones for Families as a whole, as an organisation, we are committed to the early intervention and prevention approach in regards to family support. And this approach is very embedded throughout all our services and all our work within Stepping Stones for Families. So as part of the Access Childcare Fund and the programme, this has been delivered hand in hand with the childcare that we've been providing with the school age childcare. So we have found that coming from COVID, families have needed increased support through many different aspects of their family life, whether if it was mental health support or financial support or just support in everyday living.
And have you seen this support develop over time then? You've seen a more increased access to this type of support?
Yeah, we have. We've seen it increase tenfold from the service delivering a small food bank in-house to the service using our family support and wellbeing. So we have been referring families into the service, into the family wellbeing service. We have seen an increase in families that we are signposting for support in the local community, whether that was for mental health or financial support aspects too.
What have families told you about this type of support and how it's helped them in their everyday life?
Well, families have said that it's reduced stress within their household, whether if it was for financial support, they've felt as if they've had some breathing space through financial support as well.
And what do you think the links between the family support you've mentioned there and affordable childcare are?
For families accessing childcare that's affordable, if they access a childcare that's affordable to them, that suits their needs, then that allows them to have the opportunity to potentially access more hours in work or different employment that's going to support their family, or maybe access some additional training that's going to be beneficial to their employment or their job roles. So this increases capacity to families for the change that they can achieve.
What's your hope for the future of family support? What would you like to see happen?
I would like to see it more readily available so that families can access it when they need it, so that they don't have to potentially wait for different appointments, so they can access it there and then when they feel ready to access it. Because sometimes families might think, oh, this day is good for me, I'm having a good mental health day, I'll try and access the support, but then go to access it and it's not there. So then potentially they need to wait, and then the moment's gone. So it's about striking when the iron's hot and supporting families when they need it and when they're ready at that moment.
Yeah, I think we've seen that across all the projects, really, haven't we? Because all of you are working with families, that have some complex situations as well. And I think, as you say, if that support is readily available, it really does make them feel better about accessing the out-of-school care place as well, because they've built those relationships with you all that's really strong as well over that time, and that kind of build up that trust too. So you spoke there about families like being able to maybe take up increased hours or access training, and for some of the projects as well, they've been able to access respite hours as well, particularly those who have got children, young people with additional support needs. We've seen that they've been able to spend some time with their other child. And so what I was just wondering was, you touched on that before, but I was wondering if you could tell me, in regards to the free and subsidised places, that the access to childcare has been able to happen across the projects. I was just wondering, how do you think that we could sustain them? Would it only be through funding, like the Access to Childcare Fund?
I think it would have to be funded, and there would have to be additional funding streams to sustain that within the communities, because without the additional funding within the Postle Park area, families don't have access to any other projects that are delivering any model like that. So they would need to go elsewhere, outside their area, outside their comfort zone, where they know to potentially access something like that. And the project would probably, or the service would probably be financially more to them. Mm-hmm. So they would need some financial support, whether it was directly to the families or directly to projects to deliver.
Just finally, Samantha, what did you feel personally about the fund?
I thought it was very beneficial. There was lots of learning experiences from the fund, through the peer support networks, through the meetings with yourself, Alison. So there was lots of learning there. There was lots of learning to see if there was a demand or a need within the area, to see what the demand and need was, what the families needed, what the families wanted, and how we could support that. So that was all learning, and that was all through having that fund. If the fund wasn't there, then potentially we've not got the capacity to explore that.
And if the fund wasn't there, do you think then that might affect some of the families that you're already supporting to be able to retain employment or retain additional hours even?
Yes, it will have a big impact on families that are accessing the project. For looking to see what's out there in the area, there's not a project like that that's delivering quality registered childcare through the summer. They would need to go out, for Postle Park families, they would need to go outside that area to find that, and that would be an additional cost to them.
Mm-hmm. And your project, like the others, you've been working very closely with other partners in the area as well, haven't you? So, those partnerships have become stronger over time as well, and that's maybe meant that you could signpost families to other services that are happening in the area as well. So it's beneficial.
Yeah, it's been really beneficial. We've built up relationships within the school campus itself, through the Postle Park and Rockhill partnership meetings and Thriving Place meetings. We've been able to build up relationships with the health improvement team, with Glasgow Help, with other local third-party organisations and youth organisations. So with these partnerships, you're gaining more access to more families to support, to see what they're needing.
Thanks very much for your time today, Samantha. It's really appreciated, and all of the projects have been doing such a great job, and I hope that people really enjoy hearing about your experience.
Thank you for listening to the Children in Scotland podcast. To find out more about all of our work, including projects like the Access to Childcare Fund, head to our website at childreninscotland.org.uk.